You're listening to Catholic Chicago. Ahead, the Archdiocese of Chicago brings you programs about the people, events, and issues that touch our lives. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Good morning, everybody. This is Bob Gilligan of the Catholic Conference of Illinois, and thank you for listening to our show here this morning. On a bright, beautiful day after another Bears defeat, we will trudge on here on the, what is today? 19th of September. Gosh, September's just cranking along. We have a really good show today. Let me just plow right into it, do a brief intro, and get right to our first guest. We have three different topics that we're going to cover. We could call this our Midwest West show, I guess. Our first guest is going to be Chuck Weber. He is my counterpart in the state of Kansas. He is the director of the Catholic Conference out in Kansas, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about what happened out there with that big vote on an abortion-related topic that I'm sure some of you have heard about. And then secondly, we'll switch gears. We'll come back here to Chicago, and we'll talk to Joyce DeRiga about an interesting story she had in the Chicago Catholic newspaper about the tax credit scholarship and about how certain parishes are raising money for other parishes, schools that are less affluent. And then third, at the end of our show, a real interesting guest. I read an article in a magazine called The Tablet, and we're going to have on a gentleman that was featured in that article. His name is Ben Court. He is the chief executive officer from an organization called the Foundry Treatment Center. It's in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. And we're going to talk a little bit about an issue that we've faced here in Illinois, legalization of marijuana, and the impact that it's having on numbers of people who are deemed to be psychotic and the level of THC that goes into marijuana products today and the impact it's having on society. Ben's a real interesting feature in that article, so I hope you can stay tuned to that. That'll be about, about 8:40 or so, I guess it is, give or take. So let's just, if we can, I think, or I hope, that we have our first guest on the line with us, and he is the esteemed Chuck Weber. He is the director of the Catholic, and there he is. Look at that, live and in person. Chuck, how are you today?
Bob, I'm great. I'm sorry about your Bears last night.
As usual.
I'm a closet Packer fan, but we're all about the Chiefs down here in Kansas.
Oh,
so,
I know. That's right. That's right. You have Super Bowl winners down there. It's been quite a while since we've uttered those words in January here and been a part of that. Right. But you know, we'll soldier on. Yeah, I think it's going to be a long year. We persevere. We're good at that. I don't know. We need another rainstorm. I guess that helped us in week one. Whatever it takes. The Chiefs won. I take it, right?
The Chiefs, when they played Thursday night, so they struggled a little bit, but
that's right.
They got it done. So
right.
Yeah,
I think I was busy Thursday night. I can't remember what it was. I missed that game. So you've been a busy guy. I know you've been preparing for this. What was it? Was it Amendment 1? Is that the name of it?
Yeah, it was called the Value Them Both Amendment, right. And our vote was actually on August 2nd.
Yep, August 2nd. So take us through that. Obviously we didn't prevail. Sure. But the question was a little deceiving in terms of what was on the. I think people understood what was on the ballot. But I think it's important to point out, Chuck, to people watching and listening to this, is that this you knew the value them both proposition was going to be on the ballot long before Dobbs was decided.
Right.
So I think that kind of played into what happened to you guys out there.
It did. I mean, we ran into a little bit of a sort of a two-headed buzzsaw. One, the big thing was the Dobbs decision, which overturned Roe v. Wade, which I think we all rejoice in.
I mean, sure.
Look, I mean, people in, my age, and I'm probably older than you, Bob, I think. But anyway, I mean, we've been living with Roe for almost 50 years. And so, but in Kansas, what happened is in 2019, we had a law on the books that said we're going to ban live dismemberment abortion, or the D&E is the medical term, dilation evacuation. And so immediately after that law was passed back in 2015, our state Supreme Court said, no, that's a violation of your state constitution, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I'm not joking about that. They actually took the preamble of the Kansas Constitution, which we all know from our, middle school civics class, from America, even the American Constitution, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and said that is a violation of your state constitution. And so they wiped out that law, along with, they said, all of our other pro-life laws that we've been working on since the mid-90s were also presumed unconstitutional. And so we had this fundamental right to abortion in our state constitution declared by the state Supreme Court. And so we had an abortion neutral amendment that just said abortion is not a constitutional right in Kansas, and that it's going to be up to the people of Kansas through their elected representatives to make laws regarding this really important issue. And so I think you alluded to it, but it was 39 days before our vote. Roe is overturned, and the abortion industry goes crazy. The secular media is of no help.
Yeah.
Not only are they of no help, they're actually becoming an echo chamber for the misinformation on the other side. And we got our teeth kicked in, actually, pretty good. So it was tough.
It was tough, and it was disappointing. I also think, I read an analysis afterwards, and I can't remember who wrote it, but I thought it was pretty accurate. The author's basic theme was that where we got to and chip it away, and what finally made Roe fall was sort of an incrementalist strategy. You pick up a little thing here and there, kind of like what you guys did in Kansas. And what happened, what was on the ballot in Kansas was not an incremental type approach to adding a restriction or arguing that there's the life of the child is should be considered. And this was just like an all out, the way it was portrayed, it was all out rollback of everything. And therefore the incrementalist strategy kind of went out of the way. And our side was portrayed as like one that was going to just eliminate every right whatsoever that women would have. And that was too much of a hole to overcome.
And that it was, and that was, I mean, honestly, Bob, as I mentioned a minute ago, really our amendment was abortion neutral. It was not a trigger law to ban abortion. It just said that all of our laws that are on the books, we're going to continue to maintain those laws. No taxpayer funding for abortion. We're going to let minors are going to have to get permission from their parents before they get an abortion. I mean, and those are all now presumed unconstitutional. And so, but we were portrayed as getting lumped in with Oklahoma, which is just to the south of us. They had a trigger a law in effect. Sure. And so they wiped out abortion there. Missouri, just to our right, just to our east, they have virtually no abortions in Missouri there. And so they were sort of painting us in that picture. And the abortion industry, we did pretty good actually on fundraising. We thought we would get outspent about 2-1 or 3-1. They outspent us, but what they really did is they just pounded us the last 10 days in Kansas. They probably spent $5 million, which I know that doesn't mean a whole lot in Illinois because you guys, do, population wise, but I mean, that was like by far the most expensive campaign of its kind in Kansas. And you couldn't turn on TV or the radio, or if you listen to Pandora or whatever, social media. Yeah. I mean, we were just getting our teeth kicked in, and they were just portraying us as banning abortion. Yeah. It was not a ban on abortion.
Yeah, but that's what they say. Right.
As much as our right flank abolitionists, they wanted to ban an abortion. So we had our right flank screaming in one ear saying, "You're not banning abortion," and then we had the media and the abortion industry in our left ear saying, "You're banning abortion."
Yeah.
Wow.
Chuck, is there
crazy.
any? I'm sure you've gone through some of the demographics and how people voted and that sort of thing. Is there any breakdown of how did Catholics vote compared to the average Kansan at large? Did we just fall in the line there, or how did?
I think we did. Actually, I don't have any data on Catholics, Bob, but we did a really good outreach. I think all of our bishops were totally
you guys
on
were
board.
everywhere. Sure.
We did hundreds. We knew this was going to be an education campaign, so we did hundreds of what we called value them both. So value them both. You value the mom and the baby. We did hundreds of value them both presentations across the state. Our Knights of Columbus got on board. We did sign distribution, and I think our Catholic people came out really pretty well.
Good.
And actually, we did a voter model before the campaign, and we exceeded that by 30,000 votes, maybe. But what happened is you had this independent voter that was suddenly mobilized by Dobbs and also the misinformation on the other side saying, we're going to mandate. I mean, there was just some crazy and frankly, a lot of anti-Catholic. All of the early ads were anti-Catholic. So they were coming right at the Catholic Church. And it was very difficult to overcome that. Particularly, again, when you have the secular media as not only like not being an impartial referee, if you will, but they're an echo chamber for the misinformation, and quite frustrating.
Yeah. It is increasingly frustrating. I would agree with you with that wholeheartedly. So the numbers weren't good. I think a lot of us that are looking at November are a little concerned about what happened in Kansas, and is that a sign of maybe things to come? We hope not. But I'm not sure if that's a good barometer, because it was kind of a different sort of situation. You had this amorphous constitutional question, which I'm not sure if that's going to play out in the rest of in the states where there's people on the ballot who are running for office and hold positions. But we'll see. I'm wondering, so where do you go from now? My perception of Kansas is not of a state that whose abortion laws are currently what you're describing them as. My view of Kansas is that it's probably a state where the general population is accepting this certain restrictions, maybe not outright bans, but certain restrictions. And so you're not there. Is this a cooling off period, or where do you go from here?
Well, we got kind of a two-part strategy moving forward, Bob. I mean, number one, we just have to accept the vote right now, and it's still pretty fresh. And I was sort of like only half joking that I was switching up the tourniquet around my neck hourly,
Yeah, sure.
But because we really got our heads lopped off there. So we have to understand where the people are, or where they think they are, where they think they are. And I think we're in the legislative session ahead. We're going to look at pregnancy resource centers as like, we're not going to abandon the moms and the babies just because this vote happened in Kansas. So we're going to do what we can do. So I'm meeting with a lot of people when we're sort of looking at, government can't be a mom and a dad for a kid, but we're looking at what can we do to help foster care? What can we do to help adoption? It's a very expensive, cumbersome process. All of those things. What can we do to help the moms on the ground floor who are coming to Kansas now?
Right.
They're coming to Kansas now for abortions, right? So what can we do there? I think the other thing that the abortion industry sort of painted themselves in a little bit of a corner is they said, during the campaign, they said, we don't need this amendment because we have all these laws on the books now. The ones I just mentioned, no taxpayer funding for abortion, parental consent for minors, all these things. And so these things are all in the books now. And the media sort of went, we don't need these because we don't need the amendment. And so we're holding them to that. Now, even though the court in their decision said all of your pro-life laws are deemed unconstitutional, the exact words are presumed unconstitutional. So you've heard that old joke, all you need to sue somebody is $50 and a lawyer, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, really, all they need to do is get $50 together and a lawyer, and these laws are going to be wiped out. But they're saying, oh, Kansas, we don't need the amendment because these laws are already on the books. We're already reasonable. We're like, okay, we're going to hold you to that. And so we'll see how that plays out, Bob. We already saw the first week after the election, the minority leader of the Senate in Missouri, half of the abortions in Kansas are done on Missouri girls and women.
Yeah.
And so
the other half are done in Illinois.
Yeah, right. You get a bunch of them too, right? Yeah. We're sort of sandwiched. There's sandwich in between us, but the minority leader said, "Can we find a way to have the taxpayer pay for abortions in Kansas for Missouri women?" And we had Democratic leadership in Kansas say, well, we can't do it legislatively, but maybe we can do that through the courts. And so you're already seeing this sort of like stepping away from the rhetoric of the campaign, and we're going to try and hold them to that. So sort of the two-pronged, we're going to help the moms and the babies. We're not going to abandon them, but then legislatively and rhetorically, really, we're saying, wait a minute, you said this during the campaign to the people of Kansas. Are you backing off that now? So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
A slightly different topic, but you kind of touched on something that I've been saying a lot recently, and it really bothers me that you see in nationally, and I'm concerned about this, that people who are running for office are being told that don't talk about this issue. You only see one party talking about it, and that message is that, abortion is a human right, unfettered access, everything, from conception to the third trimester,
the moment of birth,
right? And there's no, there's not been yet, I think, a ample pushback, a counterattack on that. And I don't understand why that is not the case. There was a vote in Congress on the Women's Health Protection Act that almost everybody supported on one side, and they're in the campaign so far. So my point is that when you have one side that's talking about an issue and the other side is saying nothing, that is not a prescription for a winning electoral strategy. And my point that I'm getting to now is that what you're talking about is, I know you weren't up in Milwaukee, but Clark Forsythe, who addressed our group, was asked a question about where are we going to be in 10 years on this issue? And his response was, whichever side is seen by the public as being most attentive to women's needs and their child will have the electoral win. And I think that's where you're going. And that's where we're trying to go here, but it's very difficult.
Yeah, I think one of the big issues that came up during the campaign, look, Bob, you know this. When you're up against the abortion industry and their mission is the destruction of human life, what's not on the table in terms of rhetoric? I mean, what won't they do, right? I mean, they'll do anything.
Right.
And so, I mean, really, I'm sorry to say that, but it's just the fact of the matter. So during the campaign, they brought up this this total red herring. I mean, that doesn't even do it justice. That say, if the amendment passes, if you have a miscarriage, you're not going to get treatment for that.
This is what we're hearing.
And I have to tell you, in my own family, I mean, we had a miscarriage earlier in our marriage. I mean, that is a highly emotional, a very visceral, like stab in the heart. And so we have to combat that with education. We have to get women out there that have been hurt by the abortion industry, the Gosnell victims, and those folks, and we have to come back at them and shoot them right between the eyes, just like they shot us between the eyes with false. But the thing is, Bob, we have the truth on our side. So, but I agree with you. I'm concerned about the lack of talking about this on the campaign trail. I've talked to some of our friends. Every House member in Kansas is up. And I say, you're pro-life. And I think you need to continue to say that. I mean, yes, we accept the vote, but I mean, we are not going to abandon the women and the babies, period. And that's just what we are as a Catholic church. And of course, we as Catholics, we can talk about all sorts of things. Education. You're talking about a couple of things. I heard your preview for your show. So do we really want like all of our kids smoking pot? Do we want everybody driving around buzzed? Is that going to be good for society? What about educational opportunity for some of our kids, many of them children of color who are not getting educational opportunities, those sort of things. So I think we need to talk about the Catholic ethos. And I think this is a template, frankly, for our elected officials out there. Let's talk about the whole person, not just about this particular issue always. Right. And I think it's a winning strategy. I think that's what people want to hear.
And what you said earlier is so true. Eventually the truth will win out. It's hard to get that out, but I think eventually it will. And to the degree we can do it in a compassionate way will only help the cause for everybody. Chuck, we got to go. There's the music. It went so fast. I apologize for running through this. Thanks so much for joining us. Take care, and hope to see you in the next couple months.
God bless you, my friend.
All right, thank you. You too.
Okay.
Take care.
Yep. Bye-bye.
That's Chuck Weber, who's the director of the Catholic Conference in Kansas. He's a Kansas City Chiefs fan, but we'll still talk to him on our radio. All right, don't go away. We'll have Joyce Doriga on in a minute. She's going to talk about tax credit scholarship and some interesting developments in that approach to raise money. This is Bob Gilligan. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Catholic Charities St. Martin de Porres Society offers meaningful conversation with compelling speakers to discuss the needs of our region, nation, and world, and the power of faith in meeting those needs. On Wednesday, September 28th at 6:30 p.m., Sally Blount and Father James Martin will participate in a special online event, Putting Faith into Action, Becoming Builders of a Better World. To register for this free event, visit athenaeumcenter.org/events. That's ATHENAEUM center.org. You can also email us at partners@catholiccharities.net for more information. Join us as we learn more about the charitable works of the Church and inspire each other to live our faith in new ways.
Year 44 for me teaching. When I started here, there were teachers here that had taught me when I was a student. Now I'm the old person. Right now, I teach junior high math. I love when kids find what I'm teaching to be fun and they get it. I see that light bulb go off and it's a thrill. People are always amazed. What? You're here for 44 years? It's hard for me to believe, frankly. I love what I do. Every summer I think, oh, I miss the classroom. Even on the weekends, I think I can't wait to get back on Monday and teach those quadratic equations.
Shape the next generation of leaders. Teach. Apply today at archchicago.org/schooljobs.
Come to the Mercy Mile on the West Loop to cheer on runners in the 2022 Bank of America Chicago Marathon, Sunday, October 9th from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Mercy Home for Boys and Girls annual Cheer Zone and celebration features games, food trucks, a DJ, a climbing wall, and lots of activities for kids. Conveniently located just west of downtown Chicago, it's the best place to have fun with the whole family while watching 40,000 runners pass by Mercy Home at 1140 West Jackson. And it's free. Join the fun and cheer with Mercy Home on October 9. Go to mercyhome.org.
Catholic Charities Refugee Resettlement Program has been especially busy this year, assisting individuals and families who have fled dangerous situations in their homeland, including Afghanistan and the Ukraine. The Refugee Resettlement Team helps with everything they need to start to rebuild their lives in a new country, including housing, employment, clothing, food, English classes, and referrals for legal and immigration services. The refugees are tremendously grateful for the compassion and practical help they're receiving, and they're giving back and helping each other plan for a brighter, safer future. Volunteer opportunities are currently available for those who would like to be family mentors and tutors so children and adults can practice English. To learn more about these rewarding opportunities, call 312-655-7096. That's 312-655-7096.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Bob Gilligan of the Catholic Conference of Illinois, and thank you for watching, listening for our show here this morning. And unfortunately, we have not been. Joyce Doriga had an emergency and cannot be on the air with us. But let me tell you a little bit about what the topic was, and then we'll make a transition to our next guest. So there was a story in the Chicago Catholic recently, and it was primarily featuring talk about the scholarship tax credit program that I think most listeners and most watchers are familiar with. And as I think most people know, raising money for any program is difficult in this situation, and we've struggled to meet the $100 million cap. Although we've done quite well, we've raised about $75 million every year of the program, which is laudable. And really what the nice part about the story that Joyce wrote is that there are two parishes in Wilmette. I think it's St. Joseph's and St. Francis Xavier in Wilmette. They are both have Catholic schools. I believe they have Catholic schools. I think one of them may have closed, but both of them have had Catholic schools, have a high visibility in the community, and they've taken it upon themselves to try to raise money for not their individual Catholic schools, but for a Catholic school, parents and children in a disadvantaged part of our community, in our city. And that parish school is St. Thomas of Canterbury. And their goal is an amazing goal to raise $800,000 that would afford a number of scholarships for mostly low and middle income parents to send their child to St. Thomas Canterbury. St. Thomas Canterbury is it's on Magnolia. It's in a transitioning community. Is once a very vibrant, had a high enrollment number of Catholic students, and now it's still a vibrant Catholic school, but they sincerely rely on the scholarship tax credit program. And this is a wonderful opportunity for more kids to be able to take advantage of that scholarship. And so what we had intended to do is to fill in some of the more details about that story, about how it arrived, how the parish arrived at that decision, and what led them to create such a lofty goal of $800,000, which is really amazing. So anyway, our wishes go out to Joyce. We hope she's okay. She had a family situation, and we think that that's going to be okay. So let's do this. We'll take a quick break, and we will hopefully be back with our next guest. His name is Ben Court. Interesting guest, and we'll be easily able to take up a half hour talking to him about this article I was mentioning in a publication called The Tablet. It's about the high level of THC in marijuana and what it's doing to people who consume too much of that. This is Bob Gilligan of the Catholic Conference. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Do Do you have an old bicycle that's not being used? Consider donating it to Catholic Charities Veterans Bike Project of Lake County. Skilled volunteers are refurbishing bicycles to make them safe and ready to be used by veterans to get to and from their new places of work. We also gratefully accept financial contributions that are used to purchase bike helmets and other safety accessories. Our veterans have faithfully served the United States, and now it is our privilege to serve them. For more information on the Veterans Bike Project of Lake County, call 847-782-4219. That's 847-782-4219.
Welcome back.
Es fabuloso verlos.
Dobrze jest znowu być razem.
It's good to be together again.
After so many months apart, pandemic capacity limits have been lifted, and we want to welcome everyone back to church. We can all pray together again. And listen as our choirs lift their voices in song.
We've been together in spirit.
And now, when you are ready, our doors are open wide.
Nuestras puertas están abiertas de par en par.
Nasze drzwi są otwarte.
And we're here to welcome you back to Catholic Mass.
The cemetery ministry is a core ministry of our Catholic faith tied to the corporal works of mercy. It's comforting to know that our Catholic cemeteries are caring for the remains of our loved ones awaiting the resurrection. There are 44 Archdiocese of Chicago Catholic cemeteries willing to help you in your time of loss. Call 708-449-6100 or visit CatholicCemeteriesChicago.org. Catholic Cemeteries, serving the Catholic community since 1837.
You're listening to Catholic Chicago. Ahead, the Archdiocese of Chicago brings you programs about the people, events, and issues that touch our lives. Thanks for letting us be part of your morning. Now again, Catholic Chicago.
Welcome back, everybody, and thanks for watching or listening to the show here this morning on this beautiful Monday morning here in Chicago. And thanks to our first guest, Chuck Weber. Talked a little bit about some developments out there in Kansas. Now we're going to sort of keep our west coast, I guess it's the central part of the country, focus here today and talk to a gentleman who I'm very pleased he could join us here this morning. His name is Ben Court. He is the executive director of a group called the Foundry Treatment Center, and it's out in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about an article that came across my desk recently from The Tablet. And the name of the article is called How Weed Became the New OxyContin. Ben, are you with us?
I am. Good morning, Bob.
Hey, thank you for joining us, Ben. I know we kind of moved you up a little bit, so sorry to get you out of bed there a little earlier, but if you're like us here in Chicago, we were up early because the Bears game was over by halftime, so it didn't really matter.
It's as beautiful a day out here as it is there.
I'm sure it is. I've been out there. It's absolutely gorgeous. Ben, thanks for taking some time this morning. Just in terms of background, the reason I keep harping on this topic is because Illinois passed legalized marijuana 2 years ago or 3 years ago, whatever it was. And the Catholic Conference, I represent the Catholic bishops in the state, and we opposed it. We tried to play our role in lobbying and our pleading with lawmakers not to pass this legislation, but unfortunately we came up just a little short. There's just so much on the other side on this topic, and it just amazes me that in the legislative debate how things that you're talking about here in this story were just given short shrift, and really nobody really wanted to talk about it or hear about it. Thank you very much for coming. You're kind of okay. Go away. You run a treatment center out in Colorado Springs, so you see what this article, and the article is written by a woman named Leah Woodhouse. And if summarizing the article briefly, and please jump in, basically that the marijuana that's out there today is not the marijuana that was out there when people may have a frame of reference and done this in their youth. The THC content is so much higher today than it was years ago, and it is causing such addictive behaviors that is damaging. It's causing psychosis and other things, and we're kind of in this spinning cycle of people needing to get off it, but yet using more of it, which is creating more use, more addiction, more dependency. But take it from there. Tell us about your experience treating people who have marijuana addiction problems.
Well, it's a story we've seen before and one we've seen many times. This is just the newest substance to kind of to take center stage, and it's taking center stage in a very loud way. Our program is actually in Steamboat Springs, so a little bit farther up in the mountains than Colorado Springs. And to give you an idea, I've been inside of the treatment world for a decade and a half, and 10 years ago, we saw the occasional cannabis-reliant patient, but it was an exception. Very rarely were we treating people as this a primary disorder. And now it's 30-40% of our census on every day. It has gone from something that's barely ancillary to absolutely a prime issue up there with alcohol and opiates. And people just don't realize how significant of an issue this is.
Marijuana addiction can lead to psychosis. Is that true?
Oh, certainly. And you can have psychosis without the addiction. Right. So I think, let me explain the kind of two different roads that lead to trouble. And it is all about the potency, Bob. We, for millennium, I mean, since the dawn of time, human beings have interacted with cannabis. And it's not until really recently that we've actually started to see issues like this, because we've moved so far away from what the plant is in its natural state. Mm-hmm. In its natural state, cannabis has between 0.2 and 0.5% THC, less than half of a percent THC. THC is the part of the plant that gets you high, the psychoactive component. Now, our products, the average product sold in the state of Colorado is 63%. And we have products as high as 99.9% pure THC. So the two things that have increased dramatically, one, of course, is addiction. Your rates of addiction to THC have gone from roughly 10% to over 30% in the last 8 years. So that's, of everyone who experiments with, about 1/3 of them will at some point meet the diagnostic criteria for an addiction to. The other side of this, and really the biggest story, I think, is the psychosis. It has been determined to be causal for severe psychosis. It certainly makes one psychosis much stronger, which leads to some really, really terrible things. And we're just starting to see the tip of the iceberg with this.
If you don't want to comment on this, don't. But we have these high profile. We had an incident here. You've heard about it in Highland Park, 4th of July parade. Kid, he was probably 20 years old, shoots people. It's a horrible story. We've had other incidents nationally on these type of mass shootings. And sometimes in these stories, you will see very, very faintly brought up about how use marijuana or that kind of thing. I just wonder how many times, and I'm not saying that because he used marijuana, he did this. I'm not necessarily saying that, but I just wonder if we were really being honest with ourselves, how much of these incidents, we see these crazy, horrific events, has some causation to marijuana usage, which caused addiction, which caused psychosis, and now this person doesn't even know what they're doing. I'm careful to say, I don't want to say there's a direct link, but I think there's something here, and no one wants to talk about it. except for law enforcement. They want to talk about it. But that's about it in terms of political leaders here. Nobody wants to go near that.
Law enforcement will talk about it.
Yeah, they
people
will.
in my field, we will certainly talk about it. I think, and I appreciate how you even started the question and your recognition that this is, oh, you just tossed me a live grenade. To answer this, you have to be very careful with it. So here's what I will tell you with a pretty good degree of certainty. I wrote a book on this subject that came out in 2017, and I'm about 2/3 of the way through the follow-up. So my research is fairly up to date with this. The issues that we're facing in this country today when it comes to violence, particularly around the shootings and the atrocities that are taking place, the one common denominator that you do have very clearly is mental illness. You have separation from community. You have separation from families, separation spiritually. You have mental illness. And we know for sure that the cannabis that people are using today, this ridiculously unnatural, manufactured, high-potency THC, is a significant contributor to mental illness. So I wouldn't touch the causation thing.
Yeah.
But what I will tell you, Bob, is that this nation does not take the mental illness of its citizens anywhere near as seriously as we should.
Why is there more mental illness, or is there more mental illness today than in years past? Are there things that we're doing differently, or is it just we're detecting it more often, or is it both?
What a great question. Of course, like, do we just now pay more attention to it? And do we have words for what was always out there? It would appear that we actually do have rising rates of both addiction and mental illness. And the explanations for that tend to be, well, whatever hammer you ask, they're going to tell you about their nail.
Right.
The people who want to tell you about it, separation from church, or separation, or family, the internet, or pornography, or family, or so it's hard for me to see it outside of the context of my world, which is substance abuse. But we certainly do have increasing rates, and I think the reasons for this are probably as diverse as the nation is itself.
Yeah. Ben, what could we be? I mean, I'm in the political world, and so we're making an argument against not, public policy laws that would prevent this thing. And unfortunately, we've lost that here in Illinois, and it's going on throughout the country. But I'm not. I know that there's widespread acceptance of marijuana usage. I remember when we were doing this, I had friends of mine saying, we were crazy. You guys don't, let it go. And, I get all that stuff. And it's a state by state issue right now. And I'm not sure where we are as a country. If more states are looking at legalizing marijuana, they probably are. But there's also talk at the federal level of legalizing it too. I take it that when Colorado was one of the first states to do this, I take it your organization was probably against legalization for the reasons that you're talking about, as it's affected the public health. Is that accurate?
When we initially passed this, I was actually running a nonprofit that my climbing partner and I started. That was something I thought I would never leave, working with drug addicts in the very beginning of their recovery. And I ended up leaving this company that we started to join the formal opposition campaign because I had read the proposed legislation and was just aghast. I mean, it wasn't like a restoring of civil liberties. It was 3,666 words of protection of a new industry.
Yep.
So I have been, and I was in Chicago. I'm in DC quite a bit on this subject. One of the boards I sit on is called SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana, and have had an opportunity to discuss and advise not just state governments, but our federal government on this. Our federal government isn't any closer to legalizing this, or allowing the commercial sales, should I say, than they were several years ago. There's always some rumblings, but states certainly do continue to fall. And in the new book I'm working on, I actually have finished the chapter where I highlight everything that we would have to do if we wanted to actually make this legal system work. And I just don't think there's anywhere near the political willpower. What there is there's a political cowardice to not stand up for something that is so very clearly true because they're afraid it'll lose them some votes. But there's not the willpower to actually do what would need to be done to protect the public. Right now, you've got folks who are these lawmakers who are involved in this couldn't tell you the difference between a CBD salve and a THC concentrate in the form of a distillate. We have people making the decisions who have not studied the issue. And when you consider, I mean, very frankly, Bob, the tens of billions of dollars that are being generated in this. I mean, it went from a multi-million to broke $1 billion in 2015 to now by the end of this year, we think that the market in the U.S. will probably approach about 30 billion. There are over 60 full-time lobbyists for the cannabis industry just in Colorado.
Wow.
So political pressure on them to do nothing is significant.
I was with some friends the other night, lawmakers and lobbyists on a totally different, on our scholarship tax credit. It had nothing to do with this whatsoever. And, you know, as you're in a social situation, we were talking, and I won't mention the person's name, but people here would know this name. He's a very well-known restaurateur here in the Chicagoland area, and he's closing restaurants. And we were talking about it, and somebody said, well, the reason he is he's made good money in the restaurant industry, and he's moving all of it into marijuana. He's going to move all his business into, and I was like, he's not a young man, but you know, he's been a successful entrepreneur. And I just thought, wow, if that's where we're at, you know, I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything, but you know, I just was shocked by that. And if that's happening in that one example, that's happening multifold all over the country. That's happening, I'm sure. There's dollar signs. Yeah.
In the new book, I have a full chapter on exactly who the big players are. So here's a couple of interesting things. The initial biggest financial backer for this was George Soros, followed by Richard Branson. At the very beginning of this, back in 2012, the person who runs the second largest cannabis company in the world, the second largest multinational, is Nancy Pelosi's son. The largest Canadian cannabis company is run by the former executive vice president of marketing for Purdue Pharma, the people who brought us OxyContin. This is Big Tobacco 2.0.
And in that article, it talks a little bit about the confluence of the, I think it's the alcohol industry, the tobacco industry, and Big Pharma all being significant financial supporters for legalization and growing the and business proposition. So yeah, it's the same people that brought us all these other products. And that's what I kept kind of flippantly saying, you know, when we were doing the debate here, which was, well, you know, because you hear that, well, alcohol's legal, and why, if alcohol's not legal, we tried to make that illegal, what would happen? And I kept saying, it's like, okay, I grant you alcohol's legal, but I mean, you probably know this better than anybody. It is legal, but yeah, but look at, I mean, and I drink beer from time to time, but look at also we have a social cost of alcohol that's substantial. It's ruined people's lives. It's ruined people's families. And it's just not all the green grass here with alcohol. And so why would we want to do this in addition to what we already have? I just boggles my mind. But, you know, nobody cares. It was very frustrating.
It's the greatest argument opposed, because alcohol is far and away the most devastating substance in this country. In fact, if you combine all of the other addictive substances, they don't touch alcohol. And it is in its destruction. It's cost to society, it's destruction personally and corporately. And it is not because alcohol is inherently worse. I mean, clearly alcohol is not a drug that, a substance that more negatively affects the brain and the body than, say, methamphetamine. The reason why alcohol is the most devastating substance in this country is because it is the most widely consumed. It's a simple ratio. And the reason why it's the most widely consumed is because you have a multi-billion-dollar industry behind it, intent on new consumers. I hate to break it to you, but with your beer or two a month, the alcohol industry doesn't care at all about you, Bob.
Good.
Zero.
Right.
When I'm in recovery from substance abuse, I got sober when I was 18. When I found Mad Dog 2020 when I was 13 years old, I'm who the alcohol industry needs, just like cannabis. Here's a remarkable stat for you. The Colorado Marijuana Enforcement Division gave us these data last year that 75.7% of the THC in Colorado was purchased by 6% of the consumers. This is an industry like tobacco, like alcohol, like pharma, that is fundamentally dependent on the problemed user. Take away the problemed user, take away the money. So they must cultivate more problemed use.
That's pretty sad. That's a pretty pathetic thing that we're profiting
It's disgusting.
Off of. It is.
Yeah.
Ben, so where do we go from here? I mean, what can we do? I mean, you're doing what you can on an individual basis. You're treating people, trying to, one person at a time. This is not, honestly, this is not a major issue for the Catholic Conference of Illinois, although we did try to play a role. We did play a role. We were at every press conference, everything. I put as many people as we could out there. And I could tell early on it was a rigged game. I kind of knew where this was going to go. And what was really insidious about what they did in Illinois, and this really is hard to talk about, is that they made social equity grants because, African Americans, people are impoverished. They saw this as the money that you're just talking about. They saw this as an economic development issue. And they were clearly just buying off those lawmakers who represent the poorest and most marginalized among us, largely in African American communities. And I remember talking to a lawmaker. I couldn't believe what he was saying. I kept saying, "It's like, can't you hear what you're saying?" His family, his uncle was in jail because of marijuana usage, and he ruined his whole side of his family. I'm like, well, this is what you're doing. You're creating more of this. But but somebody in the neighborhood was gonna profit off it, and they were gonna have jobs and industry, and that's how it passed here. So I'm just wondering, where do we go from here with this stuff? I don't know.
So one of the I had an opportunity to give a TEDx talk, and it got picked up by the TED main stage and ultimately featured as the talk of the week for a little while. And the subject that I discussed was the social and racial inequalities in this, and how this great lie of social justice, this is pure social injustice.
Yep.
And I won't go into the data right now, but I'll tell you, your sister city over in Detroit, the very first group that was formally opposed to what happened in Michigan was the Detroit chapter of the NAACP. The other really foul thing that happened in Illinois was you guys were the very first state to make this change legislatively.
Yeah.
So you had this done in back rooms, not even in the ballot box. And so what I will tell you, for me, and I spend a lot of time on this. I get to advise collegiate and professional athletic departments. I get to spend a lot of time with state and federal government officials. So for me, personally, the answer is simple. I just won't stop fighting this, because at the end of it, no matter how it falls, I want my kids to know I left it all on the field. For everybody else out there, I think that the first thing that they can do is get truly and actually educated on this issue, and know that you are on the right side of history in the opposition of this. I remember a time where, and it's not a name drop, but the name is relevant. My friend Patrick Kennedy sat down with Sanjay Gupta off tape, and he said to him, "You are on the wrong side of history."
He's right.
He said, "This will be, we'll recognize this for what it is in the same way we recognize tobacco for what it was. Let's just hope it doesn't take 60 years. So we will have to face the data, because it's inarguable. But you have to remember, up until the mid-90s, you had every CEO of every tobacco company in the country testifying under oath before Congress that their product wasn't addictive.
That's right.
We just have to keep pushing to advance that reckoning.
Yeah, thanks for that, because I have to say, even on, like, sometimes I keep talking about this. You're about the fifth person I've had on this in various ways, and law enforcement guys will always come on. They're very concerned about it because they see this all the time. They see, what they say anecdotally in Illinois is that we were told that, if you legalize it, well, that will drive away the illegal market. And all the law enforcement people, right? Yeah. All law enforcement say, no, you just get more of it. And Ben, I'm sure you read about, unfortunately, our horrific crime situation here in Chicago. Once again, I'm not going to make the argument one leads the other, but they sure have a relationship. And these things are all, I'm going to do I'm glad you said that, because I'm going to keep talking about this. I'll keep bringing people on. We'll talk to our people in D.C., but it's one of these issues that I see it so clearly, but I see a lot of things clearly that people don't see. So, when it fits a pattern. So,
if only they got it.
Right? I know, exactly. I feel like it's not like my dad.
And again, I'm with you, Bob. I won't say this is because of, but I will say, and want to be very clear with this, our nation faces a mental health crisis. Yeah. We are in the midst of a mental health crisis. This is a substance that has demonstrable, significant negative effects on mental health. So A and B, man, let's just 2 + 2. We have gotten so coarse in the way that we consider these issues. We at some point even stop thinking about the pain that we experience that others don't. When I was in New Zealand on a book tour and lecturing on this subject when the Christchurch massacre happened. Mm-hmm. And when we heard about it a couple days later, because we were fishing, that's a battle. My buddy and I, my cousin and I, and the guy we were with started crying. And I thought to myself, how beautiful that there's still a sensitivity to that there. Whereas for us in America, we're like, another day at the office.
Yeah.
We have to address the mental illness crises that is rocking this country.
What's the name of the book? What's the name?
Weed Inc.
Okay.
I'll send you a copy.
Great.
It's outdated. It's 2017. The new one, if the publishers allow, will be called Weed Inked.
Catchy titles. Ben, thanks so much for taking some time here this morning. I really appreciate it. God bless you and your work. Hang in there. We'll keep pushing. And like you said, I think you summed it up well. Let your kids know you're going to leave it all out in the field, and we'll just keep saying it. And that's all you can do. You just hope that what we're saying touches somebody's heart and mind, and that we'll be able to persuade some people, and maybe they'll realize what's truly going on here.
Amen to that, brother. Thanks for caring.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Keep up the good work. That was Ben Court from all the way from Steamboat Springs, Colorado. Very interesting guest talking to us about his experience with treating people who are having mental illness problems, drug addiction problems, etc. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the show this morning. Our apologies that Joyce could not get on here today. But I think at least we cover the topic at some level. So go to the story that's in the Chicago Catholic about the scholarship tax credit and what they're doing there. And thanks to Ben Court for coming on, who was very articulate. We're going to keep the fight up on what he was urging us to do, which was don't forget that what people are peddling here have significant health consequences to us all. And also to Chuck Weber, the director of the Catholic Conference out in Kansas, for his excellent work. I know he went through a lot with that Love Them Both or Value Them Both campaign. And thanks for taking some time to join us this morning. This is Bob Gilligan of the Catholic Conference of Illinois. Thank you for listening to our program here today. We'll be back on the third Monday in the month of October. I can't believe it's almost October. Time is flying by. Have a great day, everybody. Great week. And once again, thanks for listening and thanks for watching.
Join us every Monday through Friday at this time for Catholic Chicago. You can stream our programs live or listen to past programs by visiting our website, archchicago.org, and clicking on Radio TV. And please connect with Catholic Chicago on social media.